4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at the big1050.com. Sam Webb, Mr. Ira Weintraub on the other side, and my man, my guy, I love my big fella, Tim McCormick, but you know I don't call him by his formal name, the name on his birth certificate. That's not how I refer to him. I refer to him as Timmy Mack, the guy who was the best basketball player in the state of Michigan coming out of high school in Clarkston High School when he went to the University of Michigan and dominated the hardwood. Went on to be a first-round draft pick in the National Basketball Association, where he played for 10 seasons and then went on to be one of the best basketball commentators in the land, where he still does his thing. And then, of course, he does his thing with us here on the Michigan Basketball Insider, and of course on his own podcast, which we will tell you all about coming up. But of course, let me introduce him here again, my big fella, my man, my friend, Tim McCormick, aka Timmy Mack. Tim, how you doing?
Fantastic. Hope you had a nice Thanksgiving. I'm anxious to get Christmas underway, and a lot of fun to watch the happenings with the Lions and recruiting day. But now let's flip the switch because it's basketball time.
It sure is, Tim. And that's a great segue when you talk about flipping the switch, because I talked to Dusty earlier this week. And I said, Dusty, bro, I don't know what you did between Middle Tennessee and Vegas, but something happened because – I mean, we watched those close games that they played before. Tim, you and I talked about it. They had turned the basketball over 22 times versus TCU. And, you know, TCU's a good team, you know, and it was on the road. But to go from that and then a tough first half versus Middle Tennessee, and then you pulled away from them. But to go from that and then to a historic run in the Players Era Festival out in Vegas, where you destroy Dutch's squad with San Diego State and obliterate Auburn and wipe the floor with Mark Few's Gonzaga team, and the first team in history to blow out by 30 plus points ranked teams in back-to-back games. Tim, that's unheard of. So I said, what did you do? I'm asking you, Tim McCormick, what do you think happened? How do you put your finger on what you saw from Michigan basketball out there?
So I have to be honest, Sam. I still remain skeptical. I thought the games were actually boring. Like, they weren't competitive at all from start to finish. If you would have said, hey, Michigan's going to beat Gonzaga by 10 points, I would have said, wow, that really impressive. 40 points, I can't put my arms around that. And I used the word skeptical. I was so skeptical that on Monday I went to practice because I had to see it. I had to get more. I had to see if my eyes deceived me. And I did talk to Dusty May, and I said, Coach, are you concerned about your team peaking in November? And he just laughed and said, I am. It's really early. But he said on Sunday, we had our best practice of the whole year. And to be able to come off of Las Vegas, a championship, everybody patting them on the back, having a lot of turkey and extra stuffing, and then to come back Sunday and have a great practice was really impressive. And Sam, on Monday when I was there, I saw a lot of things that I liked. And first and foremost, a team that was having so much fun. They were very competitive. They were loud. They were talking. They were competing. It was a beautiful thing to see. And it makes me think this team may be legit.
So therein lies the question, Tim. And I posed that to Dusty. I said, look, when you play that well, because it wasn't just that they were shooting the lights out, because that can be fleeting. We all know, Tim, you play basketball. You can be on a hot streak, and the next game you can't throw it in the ocean. It was the other things that they were doing, and I brought up something against Dusty. So it was like an 8 or 9 point game with 9 minutes to go versus versus Auburn in the first half, and then they go on this run, and by halftime, you're up over 20. And going into the half, LJ Kason against 3 Auburn players gets a loose ball and goes up and gets gets a layup gets a ball in at the buzzer. I mean, it's like a hustle play where he's diving on the floor and gets a ball up. I said, Dusty, that to me was like a microcosm of this team. You're running the floor, you're getting loose balls, you're defending hard, you're playing with physicality. He said, man, that's it exactly. That's it. We're doing the little thing. We're making the winning plays. We aren't just, doing the flashy stuff. We're doing the gritty stuff too, Tim. And that was what stood out to me in Vegas.
Defensively, this team is outstanding, and they're getting better. Defense usually is the last thing to come around. And when we talked earlier, we said, yeah, we've got concerns about turnovers. We're worried a little bit about consistency from 3. But the one thing that we haven't worried about is this team's defense. And they have such size. They always have 2 shot blockers on the court. You mentioned LJ. I think he's their most improved player so far. And as a backup point guard, and that was a big question mark coming into this season. I feel like a backup point guard's job is to be smart with the ball, be disruptive on defense, and make good decisions. And I feel like he's out to prove himself so much that in early games he was forcing action. Now he's just easing into that role, and he is a real weapon as well. He's going to get better and better. But that front court defensively with their length and elite rim protection, they're going to cause a lot of problems for a lot of teams this year.
It's interesting to see the gelling. You talk about how elite they are defensively with those 3 bigs on the floor at the same time. That is not surprising. It is just I can't remember, Ira, who you said called them horrifying. Was it Seth Davis?
Scott Van Pelt.
Scott Van Pelt said this team is horrifying. And you can see how teams, the opposition, would think they're horrifying. They're long, obviously, but they're athletic, they're physical. You could see how teams would be like, I can't get shots against this squad, right? But how would it work offensively? A lot of that, I think, is can Yax play the 3? Talk to John Beeline. You were down in Chicago, and we had John Beeline on, Tim, and he came up and he said, Sam, if it were me, he said, I would play Yax at the 4. This is just me. Now, I'm not saying he said I would play that. Yeah, I think I said this. I would play Yax at the 4. He said if it was me, I'm not saying he can't be a 3, but he would be my 4 man. Now, it's going to be interesting to see how it works out, right? He's like, let's give it some time, and see how Dusty does it. And he wasn't the only one to say that. Like everyone around the country, I saw Raphael Davis from Big Ten Network was saying the same thing. Yax is a 4 man, but you go out in Vegas, and man, Yax is like a revelation. He's putting it on the deck. He's hitting 3s. He's running the floor. He's distributing. He's looking like he called himself a point forward, Tim, and he's looking like it. And these 3 guys are looking like poetry in motion on the offensive end. And we know what it looks like on the defensive end. And it's looking like it all fits together like Dusty imagined it would. Now, that's the question. Is that a blip, Tim? Or do you think they've gelled that 3 big lineup? Are we seeing what it's going to look like moving forward?
I'm not going to disagree with John Beeline if he thinks that Yax is a 4. I personally think that when you play all 3 of them together, that you've got something that's very unique. When I talked to Dusty at the DAC about a month ago, when he took over, he said, I want to be different than everybody else. And that's what they have with this big lineup. And you can still play them together, but you can also find time for Yax to be a power forward. I think that the horrifying part of this team is when you put all three of them together, last 3 minutes of a big game, and the other team can't get to the rim. That's going to be really dangerous. Merez Johnson, it's my favorite player on this team. I find myself mesmerized by his intensity, his toughness. He wants every rebound, and that relentless approach rubs off on everybody. In terms of Mara, I constantly see him doing things that nobody else can do. And Sam, I thought this was really neat. One of the benefits of going to practice is you see things that kind of catch you off guard. After a 90-minute intense workout, almost the entire team went into the weight room. Adai Mara was the only guy out there with a manager, and he shot free throws for about 40 minutes. That shows me that he's got a lot of heart and a lot of pride and really wants to be a good player. He didn't have to do that, but he wants to be better than 35%. I want you to write this down because we're going to talk about it. He's going to make some big free throws and win a game. His free throw percentage in the Big Ten is going to be way better than it is in the non-conference because he cares.
Yeah, I don't have any question that they're going to try to beat the hell out of him.
Oh, yeah.
For a couple of reasons. Number one.
Yeah, real quick, who's going to beat him up, though? Like the other team's best big man, most physical big man, they're going to say, look, we've got to keep Merez off the glass. You've got to check him, or Yax is killing us. We need you on him. You can't find many teams south of the NBA that can put 3 6'10" guys out there and be physical.
That's true. That's you got a point. You got an absolute point. Merez, though, watching him, he's what I thought he was going to be. Maybe his back to the basket game is a little more refined. He has a more refined post game than I thought. Like he's legit with his back to the basket. He has not ventured away facing up as much as we see him practice that in practice. Like he's working on his face up game, put it on the deck a little bit and shoot threes. That hasn't manifested in games. So it'll be interesting to see if they let him explore that. Eddie, want to move to Adai. Dusty said when we had him on, he said, hey, he's going to shoot threes at some point. Like, okay, coach. But we have seen him show what a wizard he is as a passer. We've seen him show grace in the post and touch around the rim. He's had some really special looking moments. Tim, and I got to ask you as a big fella who's seen a lot of really good ones, how good can he be? Because I find myself really, really impressed at times to the point where I say, man, this guy, he could be a special guy in college basketball. But I want to temper that and say I don't want to come off and get too carried away with a 7'3" guy as graceful as he is and just get carried away by that. What do you think about how good Adai Myra can be?
He is so young still and immensely skilled, and he's got NBA skills. I look at him as a future NBA player, and maybe he can be a difference maker. I remember when I was young watching Bill Walton play, and the thing that separated Bill Walton was that when he got the ball, he created so much chaos for the opponent because his teammates got a big smile on their face thinking, I'm going to make a great cut because Bill Walton will find me. I'm starting to see that with Michigan's players. When Adai gets the ball, he can score on his own, but if you send a double, he's going to find somebody. And that skill makes it really easy for Dusty May to say, we need a bucket. Let's go inside and post up. They're also starting to set back screens for him. They did that a lot with Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden last year. They're just now scratching the surface on how good he can be, how versatile he can be. And I also think his center of gravity is really high. So he's battling now to try to get really good position. Like a smaller guy can hit him on the hips and the legs and keep him away from the basket. I think he's going to figure out how to get deeper position and then go to work. He could be unstoppable.
Yeah, so yeah, when we were talking about beat him up, actually wasn't talking about Rez. I was talking about Adai. They're going to try to beat him up. Good
Yes.
luck. Good luck trying to beat Marez up. They're
Yeah,
going to beat Marez up. Adai, that will absolutely be the strategy. Okay. Now, like, who are you going to do it with? I think they're going to try to do it with anybody, whoever is on them, because I think they're going to feel like, you can use anybody to try to be physical with Adai. I think they're going to feel like that's an okay strategy against a guy that they're going to question his toughness. I like the tech that he got. I do. Like, I liken it to a story that if you go back 15 years, this is one of the great, it's one of the great exercises in a coach sort of teaching toughness. If teaching toughness is a thing, he it was BA Bakari Alexander. He had Jordan Morgan, and he was in practice with John Beeline, and he was coaching J-Mo, and J-Mo was he teaching him to be, so puts dog on the court, and J-Mo, he dunked the ball. He said, did one of those, right? And Beeline stopped practice, and he said, what the hell was that? Get out there and run. And so BA got on the line with him to go run, right? And Beeline said, what the hell are you doing? And he said, Coach, hey, if he's gonna run, I'm gonna run with him. I want him to do that, right?
That's so funny. Good story.
Right?
All right. I
Right?
hadn't heard that.
And so for Adai to dunk and hang on the rim and give you a hot, like, man, I love to see that. I want to see that kind of fire from him, because that's one of the things that when you watch him in practice and they're beating him up with the pads, and obviously that's one of the things that they were trying to say coming out of UCLA he didn't have. Like, anything that gives you that kind of presence, that you're trying to bring that side out of him. I love to see it. I don't want to get him text every game, don't get me wrong, but I do want to see that kind of side of him become more obvious in his game.
Yeah. When you think about the physicality that's needed in the Big Ten, a lot of times big guys, they're not comfortable being so big. Like, they just always feel like they stand out, and they're not going to be exuberant and throw their hands in the air and yell and scream. It comes with time. But I guess my point with the Daimara is that how many teams in the Big Ten can throw three big players out there? As an example, Trey Kaufman-Renn at Purdue, he's physical. Oster Clough, very physical. Well, your third guy might be Fletcher Lawyer, and you're going to ask him to go out there and cover a Daimara? Like, there aren't many teams that can throw three big guys out there. Michigan State can play very, very physical. Yes, but what happens when Cohen Carr is playing a Daimara? And I can promise you this, when you play Rutgers, they don't have three big guys. So that's the separation that's going to make Michigan tough.
Yeah, and so we saw the strengths. I mean, they were shooting the basketball well. They ran the floor. They played great defense. They looked so deep. I mean, you're coming off the bench with Roddy Gale. I know you said you like to see Roddy in the starting lineup, Tim, but it's like, man, you bring Roddy Gale off the bench and you see the benefits of that too. What that could look like for this for this team is the scoring punch that you get from that. So I set it up that way to ask you, Tim, now give me the holes at coming off of that. Give me the concerns. I know one of them was, how do you maintain your edge? How do you maintain the grind? You went to practice and you saw, and I talked to Dusty about it too. I was like, hey, how do you keep pushing? How do you keep grinding? He said, hey, we're practicing well coming off of that. So clearly they maintain their edge. So what would you say is your concern? What would you say is the hole in this team after Vegas and moving forward?
Well, handling prosperity is one of the most challenging things in sports. Everywhere Michigan players go now, everybody's talking about how great they are. They're the best team in the country, the best net rating, the best defensive team. I think it's easy to relax. And so that's a concern. The advantage Michigan has is their depth. And when Winters Grady is he wants to get on the court, he's pushing people ahead of him. Malik Cordell wants to get on the court. He's pushing the big guys. There's a lot of competition when you can go 10, 11, 12 deep. So that's a positive. I also am concerned about turnovers. We've seen that they can struggle. Scouting reports are going to get deep, really, really deep in the Big Ten. Everybody will know exactly what Michigan's going to do. So that's a concern. And I think that we're going to see a lot more big on big pick and roll like we saw last year for Michigan. So I think they have answers for that. And then the turnovers against high pressure teams like TCU. And I think Wake Forest has been a better defensive team than I expected. Turnovers are still going to be an issue from time to time. Keep them below 15, and I feel like it's manageable. So, yeah, I have concerns, but I also have positive answers for each of those concerns.
All right, so they're about to open. They're about to open Big Ten conference play with Rutgers, and this is not a Rutgers team that look. You never want to overlook a Pikel squad, but they're coming in having lost 4 of their last 5 here, Tim, and Purdue. I'm trying to remember the score, but I know Purdue handled them.
It was like a 16-point game, Sam. It was a blowout.
Yeah. So they handled them, and so I do want to see how Michigan comes into this game. They came into practice, handled the week of practice well, but I am interested to see how Michigan comes into this game because Tim, there's every reason to think that they should manhandle this team, but like you said, handling prosperity, sometimes it can step up to bite you. So I guess I'm more worried about that than I am about Rutgers.
I think that this is a favorable schedule. Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey are not there anymore. They're in the NBA. So I don't see Rutgers having the weaponry to be able to hang with Michigan for a full game. But they do play really hard under Steve Pikel. Dylan Grant is a good player. Tariq Francis has had solid minutes. But the truth is, Rutgers is going to be really physical and tough, really good on the defensive end. I would anticipate Michigan will struggle for a half. It'll be close at halftime. They'll make adjustments and just wear out Rutgers in the second half and kind of like Purdue, get the 15 to 20-point win and move on. I'm really anxious to see the Villanova game next Tuesday. I think that will be a lot of fun and will give us a lot more answers than we think.
Yeah, man. That is kind of you start to look for these litmus tests, right? Because we were talking about that with Gonzaga. What will they do against the number one Kim Palm's number one team, and they wiped the floor. I watched Mark Few's coach's show just to see what he would say, and he said, "I've never seen anything like it." He said, we've had in my career games where there's nothing we could do. He mentioned Illinois, back when, I think it was when Self was coach, when they had, their great run to the Final Four. And he mentioned when they played Baylor, when they made their run. And he said, we've had some years. He said, that is as much of an avalanche as I've ever seen with a team. He said they're long, and he said they were hitting every shot. He says there's nothing we were going to be able to do with that squad. No timeout I could call, no action we could run. He said it was an absolute buzzsaw. So part of it was he said they were just on one. He did seem to say that some of this was not sustainable for Michigan. He as a coach, he seemed to chalk some of it up to that. And then he did acknowledge, though, that they have some unique traits with those three bigs that they're going to be tough for anyone to handle. So I do want to see from the three big aspect, is particularly from Yax, his shooting and his passing. How much of his 3-point shooting and how much of his ability to create is he going to be able to sustain moving forward? I'm very intrigued by that. And then I'm on with Adai, how much of his ability to score and how much of his ability to play through contact is he going to be able to maintain? Because I've been intrigued by that. I know he could pass, but he's been able to do other things at a high level too.
Sam, there's legitimacy in everything that you just said, but there's another aspect of this team which I think will be fun to watch. And let's go back to it wasn't the Gonzaga game. I think it was Auburn late in the second half. Oscar Goodman got the ball in the left wing and drove and dunked on somebody. You remember the play, right?
Dude.
And then Adai Mara did a dance, not an impressive dance, but it was a dance. And then Yaxel Lendeborg pretended like he fainted and fell on the ground. And Roddy Gale got the nasty look on his face, like, what did I just see? And it was really fun to watch a team enjoying themselves. This is a tough time of the year. You're away from your family at Thanksgiving. You've been practicing and grinding, and to have fun when you play basketball is a separator. And not all teams can do that. And it looked really legitimate. The guys were sincere, and they wanted to see their teammate have some success. Those are the things that make basketball and being really good sustainable.
Yeah. So I'll close with this. Something that Jalen and Chris said about this team out in Vegas. They said, listen, they're obviously really talented. Talking about Michigan, all these pieces and the unique lineup and all of that. They said what separates this team and what they see will make them special and make them the best team in the country. He said, look at their chemistry and camaraderie. So that you cannot buy that. You can't mimic that. That you can't, as a coach, as an ant, when you see that on a team, when you see absolute buy-in, when you see I'm here for the next guy, it's not about me, I'll sacrifice a stat, I'll sacrifice minutes, it's all about we, not me, that they see on this squad. That's different. That is different about this team. They said we had it on our squad, and we think this team has it too, which they, in this era, in this age of basketball, is amazing with the transfer portal, right? This team just came together.
Mm-hmm.
But they said they feel like they see it with this team. There is an amazing bond. They say, and I think it's embodied in that moment that you said when Oscar comes down and just dunks on, dunks on his man, and everybody is just elated. Or when they're like, hey, they want to see everybody on the bench get in the game. I think you see it what they're talking about with this team.
Yeah, you're never as good as everybody says you are. But the other story that I thought was really fun was after the game, Lauren Jabara, locally from here, Michigan grad, was interviewing Dusty May, and the whole team got right behind him, and they were clowning around. They were laughing. They were nodding with enthusiastic approval, everything that Dusty said. Basketball's got to be fun. And look, I'm not saying they're going to run the table. I'm not saying they're going to get to the Final Four, but they have pieces that are going to be hard to deal with for opponents. They've got a lot of options available. And I also love the fact that on a given game, they've got 7 or 8 guys that could lead the team in scoring. And that's going to be really important as you get into the grind of the Big Ten.
Tim, before you go, tell the folks about your podcast, man. It's rolling. Got a lot of fans.
It's going great, Sam. I take about half of the podcast to break down Michigan basketball. It's called the Go Blue Hoops podcast. And I also talk to former players, guys I've built relationships with over the past. 2 weeks ago, it was Gary Grant. I made the argument his jersey should be up in the rafters. This week was Nick Stauskas. What a great career he had at Michigan. Next week, we're going to talk to Yaxel Lendeborg is going to be our guest. So it's been a lot of fun. I appreciate you pumping it up, Sam. Thanks.
Absolutely. All right. With that, folks, that is going to do it for this edition of the Michigan Basketball Insider. You got Rutgers coming up, got Villanova coming up. It's going to be a great, great time. So thanks for watching and listening to the Michigan Basketball Insider. And with that, we got to get to a break. Be back on the other side here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at thebig1050.com.
Great stuff, guys.
All right. Thanks,